Well, hello, that's me again. Today is January 11th, 2025. It is Saturday, and this is me coming to you to spoil your weekend. And what you saw in the beginning, this clip, is what makes all the difference in the world everywhere, from the grand strategies of the states to the applied geopolitics to military art to culture to history to everything else, top, bottom. And this tells you the profound metaphysical difference between Russians, for example, and Europeans and NATO in general, because NATO doesn't have people like that. I mean, I'm not saying that there are no courageous or professional people. Of course they are. There are in the US Army, there are somewhere else, but primarily, for example, if you talk about the US Army, none of them ever fought defending their country. None. Nobody. There's none. Zero. And here's this young kid, well, 25, 26 years old. He's still a kid, for me at least. And he is obviously recovering from wound, and he goes to the place which is sacred for every single Russian, except, of course, for those people who subsist on their CIA and American NGOs, such as Soros Fund grants. He goes there just to bow his head in the front of the tomb of the unknown soldier. This is actually a representation of 11 million Red Army soldiers who died defending the country against the invasion. And not only by, Nazi Germany, we have to stop pretense. It was combined or unified force of the Europe. And they had Italians, they had Romanians, Hungarians, Finns, and, my God, French, Belgians, Spaniards, oh my gosh. So yeah, this was 11 million of the killed Red Army soldiers. The rest of those 27 million killed, 16 million were Russian and Soviet, not only Russian, but primarily Russian civilians. People who have been executed, run into their basically concentration camps and labor camps in Nazi Germany, where they died from starvation, and we can go on and on and on about it. And this is the fundamental difference, because Russians fight right now in the defense of their own country. However, what we have now, and people say, you are not treating England properly or fairly. As I already stated, I do not do the broad brush. People in my blog know that I completely forbade anybody to go out there and generalize and apply everything for the people, for the nations as a whole. This is not to say that nations do not have there some features and traits which could be, singled out as specifically Russian, English, American, Indian, or Chinese. No, they do. Obviously, it's called culture, and some of the parts of the culture could be very positive and universal and very interesting. Others could be what? Absolutely nasty, let's put it this way. I'm Russian, for example, by ethnicity and by culture. I certainly know what my nation, my ethnicity, my culture has not only positives but some bad things. I am aware of that. But so when I say something, most of the time I mean the political and military political top of people. I do not, and I forbid at my blog anybody to come out and generalize that, oh yeah, all British are jerks, you cannot do that, because there are all kinds of people and many of them are good. But however, I want to reiterate, and this is what will be explained to you during this video, is that a majority of for example, Europeans, they don't like Russians. That's the trait. That's the trait of every single West European nation, be them French, be them Belgians, be them English, be them or British, be them Germans, or be them whoever they are. They just don't like Russians, period. And this is just the reality with which we have to live. It doesn't mean that all of those people who, for example, hate Russians are necessarily bad people. Who knows? They might be very decent family men. Or, well, for example, the commandants of the number of the concentration camps in Nazi Germany, Nazi officers, SS officers, they turned out to be very good family people. Would you believe that? So, but this is the basically applied geopolitics, and this is where all those features, all those failures, all those faults come to the forefront, and we have to consider them. It's like, when you look at this guy, first you have to understand that Ben Wallace, yeah, he is a clown, as pretty much anybody who graduated Sandhurst. There are no good officers there. And so he said that, guess what? Ukraine should have mobilized all men and women. Women, ex-UK defense minister says. Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky should have introduced mass conscription and mobilized all men and women without sparing the younger generation, former British defense minister Ben Wallace has said. I would suggest Ben Wallace actually to send his children to fight in Ukraine. He obviously covered himself, although here they say, oh yeah, he served in Northern Ireland as a police. Yeah, it's like, what the hell, police operation? Well, that's fine. I've been through police operation. I'm not going out there saying I was some kind of hero. We just did our job. But the point is, this is loser. This is what actually is representation of the British political class. People who have no consciousness, they are genocidal maniacs, and many of them are war criminals. And so they have to be treated as such. So, and he says he's the guy who is semi-literate militarily. He won't be able to hold any serious military conversation with real military professionals, despite the fact that he was afforded the meeting, for example, with the chief of the general staff of Russian Armed Forces, General of the Army, Valery Gerasimov, who looked at him most likely. He obviously, Gerasimov being a highly cultured and highly educated man, he, well, provided some kind of the, appropriate decorum, but he was looking at him as the flea. The guy, you cannot even imagine the universe which separates those people in their weight and their abilities to command armies. However, here's this guy who comes and says, I always had a question for Zelensky. Why didn't you mobilize your people? In 1939, we mobilized the men, and in 1940, we passed the Women in War Act. We mobilized the women, Wallace said, referring to Britain's conscription policies during World War II. Well, somebody has to explain to him, which actually, well, what can I say? England never experienced any serious invasion in its modern, or for that matter, ancient history, since whatever the Normans just, got into, whatever the years there were. They were bombed, I give them that, but that's about it. And when this guy, who has no clue, he wouldn't understand even the mobilizational problems and what are they, talks about like this and trying to throw what's left of the Ukrainian nation's sperm bank, which is our 18-year-olds and their children. Well, what can I say? This is everything you need to know about these genocidal maniacs, and that the guy is just plain simple war criminal. I don't know, well, at some point of time, Russians really, yeah, they invited him to Russian Ministry of Defense and Russian General Staff, but he never got the message, actually, what kind of the pictures he was photographed in the background with Valery Gerasimov and Sergei Shoigu. What can I say? The lack of culture and lack of the historical awareness, but then again, as I already stated, when you have people who are like accounted as historians, which he is not. Mr. Anthony Beaver, who is a shyster, and but he is widely published. But then again, some people say that Solzhenitsyn was widely published, and people believe that he is a representative of Russian culture and Russian literature. But what can I say? It is what it is, and nothing could be done about it. They are hell-bent. For example, British political class, and they're doing this in spite they hate Russians, and they are ready to throw anything there at Russians as long as it somehow harms them. This is their level of hatred. Plus, as some people noted in my blog, that's why I love when I have all kinds of the people coming and commenting and expressing their opinions that, yeah, that's probably correct when they stated that actually England was so invested in Ukraine. This was the last gasp of this pathetic remnant of the empire, this little stinking island, which pretends that it matters, that they are somehow, when they see everything collapsing, they are really desperate. They hate Russian gods. Yeah, they should have studied real history, not this BS which they teach them in the Sandhurst or wherever the general staff, whatever the crap they teach in the King's College, which is of course a joke, not a military education. But here we are. And so, when we look at it intensively, everything comes down to the, well, here we have this issue. Victorianikova, excellent observer in the RIA News, she published yesterday a wonderfully sarcastic article. It's machine translation, but it translates as that, oh, not that we wanted to, I didn't really want to. The states finally dumped Ukraine. Yeah, she correctly states that you will be surprised, but Ukraine has suddenly lost its strategic importance for its Western partners. They urgently have some things to do. Either Hollywood is burning or new detail of PDDs have come to light, and then it's time to annex Canada, Panama, Greenland. No, the Anglo-Saxons have no time for Kiev. The most influential publication, Financial Times, is still cutting from the shoulder. Ukraine is not the center of the universe. Well, yeah, but it's not about Ukraine anymore. And Nikiforov correctly states that actually the dynamics of the process vividly resemble the Ukrainian manner of surrendering cities and villages, which is absolutely true. As long as Bakhmut, now Artyomovsk actually, as long as Bakhmut was defended, it was of incredible strategic value to Kiev. As soon as the Russian army took it, Artyomovsk, which is the other name of Bakhmut, was no longer of any value. Western cartridges have adopted this trick. She talks about Western press. Obviously, it's machine translation. Now they are draining all of Ukraine in exactly the same way. And when she says draining, that means flushing down the toilet. And the Russian side has been telling the Ukrainians since 2013, do not be fooled by Western promises. Absolutely. And there will be no Western promises because although the RT, which is, well, that's RT, okay, they are the same shysters as the, it's just very unprofessional. And so here we have this, they need to sell stories and they throw this thing that Putin ready for unconditional Trump meeting, Kremlin. Well, that's not quite like that. It was basically formulated, but that's RT. They have been noted for, working not so much towards the representing Russian position as much as the giving the tribune to people who still believe that somehow Russia will have the normal relations with the West. Russia will not, because the West and the United States is existential enemy of Russia and Russian people. However, here is what Russians said, which they always said. President Putin has repeatedly stated his openness to contact with international leaders, including the US president, and in particular Donald Trump. No conditions are required for this. What is required is the mutual desire and political will to conduct a dialogue, to resolve existing problems through dialogue. So there you go. So then there's not unconditional. There is actually the statement that if they want to talk, let them come. This was Russia's and Putin's position since the start of the special military operation. And in fact, peremptory, as many people say, it was the famous, what they call the, ultimatum, but in reality, the list of demands which Russia put forth in December 2021. And you can easily find this, you can buy my book, it's all there, but obviously you can go to the Russian Foreign Ministry website and you will find it. It was all over the place. And Russia says, sure, if you want to, it'll come. But as I already stated many times, and it has been reiterated so many times, that the question is not Ukraine. Ukraine is being demolished as we speak. It's, and of course, armed forces of Ukraine, that is why they need the 18-year-old kids to fight, is pretty much done, and Russians are in the operational space. But it will be about how Russia and combined West can coexist. There will be no friendship, there will be no very close economic or cultural ties, but there will be about the Russian security. And the only thing which Mr. Putin, the same as most Russians, are concerned with is their security, the security of their country. And you cannot trust genocidal, amoral, unethical, lying, stealing, combined West. That's what combined West is. They are the guys who just basically soaked the planet in blood. And that goes, directly to the United States, that goes to Britain, that goes to France, of course. They are colonial powers. They pretend that they are empires. They are not. Most of them are pipsqueak, and the United States have been demonstrated actually as the military paper tiger. And that will be the framework of any negotiation, if you wish, with Trump. Trump has 9 days before he fully, completely insulates himself or cuts himself off the Biden cluster coitus, which was, of course, Ukraine, or, as I already stated, within 2 weeks of him taking the oath on the January 20th, that will be his war, and the United States has no wherewithal to support Ukraine, despite these pathos-ridden statements about, oh yeah, we will provide even more weapons. No, you can't. Oh, maybe they will. The point is, it will make absolutely no difference, because whatever the United States produces, or for that matter, Europe produces, is, well, not good, to put it mildly, and is not designed to fight a real modern, cutting-edge military power as Russia. And so say, oh, you're rubbing it. No, rubbing it in. No, I'm not. And if you take a look attentively that, or if we go to the front line, for example, here are the yesterday's losses of Ukraine. As you can see yourself, we're really going fast against over the million. And 2010 have been killed yesterday, it's January 10th. 102 UAVs have been thrown by Ukraine at Russians, and as you can see yourself, well, what can I say? This is what they're good at only. This is basically what US military provides them, primarily with all kinds of the targeting and against the civilian targets. As you can see yourself, one of the apartment blocks was hit by one of the UAVs in the city, in the small city of Katovsk in Tambov area. So yeah, that's what they do. And yeah, those people, those military people from United States who do ISR, they should be very proud of themselves, because they obviously provide a lot of targeting against the civilian targets, and they cannot wash itself off anymore. United States military have been smeared for the rest of their existence with what today became their greatest military defeat, because first, they cannot fight the war anyway. And now everything they did, including the ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, which was and is provided 24/7 to armed forces of Ukraine, well, then they are good at hiding behind the backs of their best proxy. That's who they are. And so we have this now situation. If you take a look at the map of Toretsk from yesterday, so as you can see yourself, in the brown, that's what Russians control. Essentially, Toretsk is liberated. It's just that they finish off the remnants of the Ukrainian forces to the, as you can see yourself in the green, which are the outskirts. And yeah, so pretty much the done deal, as it will be soon with Pokrovsk, because there's no necessity to rush. And Pentagon, those competent people who are still there, they understand the outcome. They know. Nothing they can do about it. They can try to, obviously, if somebody wants to commit suicide and start the World War III, but they can try to deploy US Army there and see what happens. But you know what? We know the outcome. So there's nothing to talk about. And here we have the situation that Russians also report interaction of the incoming Trump administration and Mr. Kirby, who is, the admiral. How he became admiral, nobody knows, but he was going on record yesterday stating that the outgoing Washington administration, led by President Joe Biden, claims that the next American leader, Donald Trump, will be able to lift a new large-scale package of sanctions against the Russian energy sector only through the U.S. Congress. In my opinion, it is true, Joe Kirby stated. I mean, we are talking about the executive action taken by the President Biden. Let the next administration decide whether it will take any further executive action at all, and so which ones, the White House spokesman added. Well, I mean, obviously the outgoing Biden administration, which is filled with the neocons and, the fanatics, they try to create the scorched earth, basically under the feet of Trump administration. But the point is, I don't think so Mr. Trump is intent to lift sanctions one way or another. Russians are absolutely aware of that, and they really do not, so to speak, bother themselves over that. That would be nice if he lifts it, but as I already stated, their economic ties between Russia and combined West will be continuously cut, and it's probably for the better. And the more it happens, the more independent Russia becomes, which she is the only country in the world which doesn't depend on the American, so to speak, financial and economic order. And that's what drives those people nuts, in Washington. But then again, they are not cultured. If you look attentively at the U.S. State Department, they are not good. They are not, well, how to put it politely, competent. As our dear friend and my dear friend Larry Johnson correctly stated when he wrote about basically what is called deep state, and he talks about the military-industrial complex, and he wrote excellent piece. Read it. I strongly suggest you to read it, defining the deep state. And he writes that the phrase deep state is now a staple of political vocabulary, but people who have not worked in the Washington bureaucracies, especially those tied to national security and intelligence, may not appreciate the meaning. And he goes on to describe to what is going on and why nothing could be done to reform it. Because you cannot reform the cultural military DNA of the United States, which never defended itself against real enemy. So, and it's just the DNA. It's always was the expeditionary imperial power, and as such, it like Great Britain. It's just, in some sense, better and much larger version of the Great Britain. And so we have to wait and see how Trump will will proceed. I think so he has a shot on the Greenland. I don't think so he will be able to do anything about Panama. But Greenland looks like a, viable political target for Mr. Trump. And he needs some kind of PR victories because obviously a catastrophe, military and geopolitical catastrophe, which befell the United States, I'm not talking about the European chihuahuas in Ukraine, it's already beginning to manifest itself. And the most important one is the long term, that essentially the whole rules-based order was based on the mythology of the American military power, which is not that powerful after all. And that's what is happening. And if that hasn't been enough, well, we have the things that we need to discuss a little bit about the military technology. And as you understand, this has been on record by me, and I was speaking about this for a long time, that the military topic, people want to associate themselves with the military. They want to associate themselves with the military based on their perception of masculinity. It's sexually driven for many, but also the fact that, technological shiny toys, they go out and begin to talk about it as if there's something they know about. And let's go back to Oreshnik. And of course, make no mistake, we are into the second month of the not having any satellite photos of Yuzhmash. What's going on, guys? Where are those Pentagon and CIA, NSA photos of this thing to showing that actually it is still there, it is not damaged, and that Areshnik is not a real deal? None, none. Now, well, it was 24th of November, month and a half. What happened? Russians, of course, do have those photos. And when time comes, they will be released. But Russians play the game with Americans and waiting, hey, show me your photos, and then we'll show you the real ones. And of course, they cannot do this because they need to, that's another kind of basically nail in the coffin of much, to be embellished, to put it mildly, not to say the infinitely exaggerated American military might, which of course now here we get into this thing. Some people, I'm not going to be naming these people, but they come out and say that, well, look at this, I don't know who those people are. I try to go for who we are, and they just, generic thing about we're the guys who really know things and we want to provide you with some data. But look what they do. The Center for War Studies on January 9th writes that assessment of Russian Oreshnik missile system, which is of course not an assessment. Already immediately the thing which comes to your mind when you look at this is that according to Pentagon analysis, Oreshnik is a modification of Russia's RS-26 Rubesh missile, an intercontinental ballistic missile that has been tested since 2011. Well, for starters, I have news from Pentagon, as Mr. Solomonov, the creator of Oreshnik, and other people who participated, they already went on record on number of times saying that it has nothing to do with Rubesh. Oreshnik is a completely new system, and whatever they saw in their satellite photographs from the Kapustin Yar range, they just saw the probably container, which looks some kind of the ballistic missile. But it's not. They already stated it's not Rubesh, especially not Pioneer. And so what else is this? Who knows? But something new. And then of course this center, which they don't even describe who they are, right? And so they present the allegedly General Herbert McMaster, a former U.S. National Security Advisor, who said that our probability models for defense against missile attacks show that U.S. THAAD and Aegis systems cannot be relied on to counter Oreshnik and are unlikely to achieve reliability within the next 15 years. So I went out on the line and started looking for this rather amateurish statement. Because Aegis is actually, it's we cannot even go there. It's funny even to talk about that anything like this can intercept Oreshnik, including THAAD. But then, of course, for some reason, somebody adds that the aforementioned THAAD is a highly effective combat-proven defense. Since when? They launched one missile somewhere from Israel, and they say, oh, it hit something. If they call it combat proven, then I have a bridge to sell you. And so there are no systems which can intercept this. But so the question which, the issue which kind of attracted my attention about the fact that I doubt that McMaster said this, is the fact that there is no probability model for Oreshnik. You know why? Because how to put it, you have to know the telemetry. You have to know what type of the weapon you are dealing with. And believe me, Pentagon can only, guess together with the CIA what Oreshnik is. And the only probability models they may have are those of the indeed ABM, anti-ballistic missiles. That means what? This Aegis Ashore, those SM-3s, they theoretically thought they can fly and, just meet into very predictable ballistic missile trajectory, in some point and kill this missile. Russian weapon systems, the latest Russian systems, they have nothing to do with the actually classic ballistic trajectories They fly within atmosphere, as did Oreshnik, and they fly in the hypersonic speeds and velocities such a way that US missiles simply will not have the ability to intercept them. I mean, basic physics. But here we have, now, if anybody wants to take a look what ballistic missile defense is, you will see yourself the modeling actually for BMD, and this is one of the papers from 1999. The probability models there basically change a little bit. It depends on what you put into as input. And this paper is by Dean Wilkening, develops a probabilistic moment that can be used to determine the technical performance required for a defense to meet specific political military objectives. The defense objectives is stated as certain probability that no warhead leaks through the defense. It's kind of self-evidence, you know. So, and what he writes, you will begin to go to those models, and lo and behold, you suddenly get into the classic, you know what, probabilistic models, and obviously which are the probabilities of intercepts, probabilities of the actually malfunctioning of the equipment, all kinds of things, including the probability of distinguishing between the decoy and the actual warhead. And if you go and take a look at it, you can go and get my second book, which is called The Real Revolution in Military Affairs, where I explain to you how it all works. And if you have the basically probability of intercept of Oreshnik, let's say 0.001, it means what? You don't have any probability. And no matter how many missiles you count, you know, in this intercept, they will not intercept it. So, and as you can see yourself, for example, this is also another representation of the number of warheads in the attack against the probability that they are not leakers. And it's classic math for that, but this is not math, for example, against such things as Oreshnik, Kinjal, Zircon, or any other hypersonic weapon systems, because they are not ballistic. They could be used in, you know, in the booster phase, uses some kind of the ballistic missile foundation, but they fly within atmosphere, they maneuver violently, and they cannot be intercepted. Yeah. And even if to consider the fact that this McMaster's quote was something which was made up completely, yeah, about 15 years. By that time, Russia is already stepping over the new generation of weapons, which, as they already stated very clearly, Oreshnik is not the most cutting edge thing. We have more, and those are like, but even Oreshnik, what it did, everybody knows what happened. So, and this is what I wanted to tell you guys today. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my video, and also can afford the, you know, support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee or two. That will help me to continue to do what I am doing. So have a nice rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.